All right, let's get a bit of politics for you this morning and talk to the Shadow Defence Minister Luke Pollard, who joins us now. Great to see you this morning. Tell us more about Labour's defence plans, because it's all a bit of a shocker, isn't it? 2.5% looking at of GDP, looking at defence spending, looking at increasing the nuclear deterrent, more building at the shipyard in Barrow-in-Furness. I mean, it's such a shift from what we were seeing only 5 years ago.
Well, Keir has changed the Labour Party, and he is determined that Labour goes into the next general election trusted on defence, which perhaps we might not have been in the past. And that is why Keir is in Barrow today, making clear Labour's commitment to our nuclear deterrent, to build the 4 new dreadnought nuclear submarines that we need to have to maintain that deterrent in Barrow, supporting UK jobs and the UK supply chain, and making clear that when economic conditions allow, we hope to get to 2.5% of GDP on defence, making sure that we can support those men and women in our armed forces, have the equipment and the capabilities that they need to deter aggression, but if necessary, defeat an opponent in war. And that is what Keir is setting out today, a strong position on defence.
Well, Defence Secretary Grant Shapps says that Sir Keir Starmer is the same man that tried twice to put Jeremy Corbyn in charge of the nation's armed forces. He says this is the same man who wanted to scrap our nuclear deterrent, dismantle NATO and question the integrity of British intelligence community. So can the British public trust the Labour Party with defence, or is Sir Keir Starmer just saying anything that he needs to in order to get into number 10?
No, Keir has changed the Labour Party. He's made it very clear that the Labour Party that we have in 2024 is very different from the one that went to the polls in 2019. We've set out clearly a commitment, an absolute commitment to the nuclear deterrent, an unshakable commitment to NATO, and an ambition to get to 2.5% of GDP on defence. Now, we've seen from the government that they're cutting defence spending. In the last budget, only a few weeks ago, they actually cut the day-to-day spending of defence. And so when Ben Wallace, the former Tory Defence Secretary, got to his feet in the House of Commons about a year ago and said that defence had been hollowed out and underfunded under the Conservative government, he was right. The thing is, the world is a more contested and difficult place than it has been for a very long time. And that's why we need to make sure that the armed forces have the resources they need to keep the UK and our allies safe. That's why a commitment to the continual at-sea deterrent, those nuclear submarines always at sea, able to defend the UK and our allies, is so important. But it's also why we're setting out that defence spending should be directed at UK companies first before we look at buying from international companies. That's supporting jobs in the UK supply chain, right across the United Kingdom, making sure that it's not just those people in uniform that get the benefit of that policy, but it's the entire supply chain across the country as well.
Look, a lot of people would cheer you on. I can hear the people of Barrow cheering you on pretty much. I mean, that's where I'm from, so I know the shipyard very, very well there. And yet there will be people who say, great, but you're sounding more Tory than the Tories.
Well, it's important that we get the investment into Barrow, because if they are to build more submarines, we need to have more investment in Barrow. And that means more investment in skills, as well as the non-defence investment around housing, transport and skills as well. But when it comes to defence, it is important that people, when they vote, can have confidence that a future Labour government would not only be strong on the economy, and Rachel Reeves has set out why economic stability matters so much, but also on national security as well. These are difficult times we are in at the moment. We can see with Russian aggression rising, threats to not only our allies, our NATO allies in Eastern Europe, but also threats to the UK, as well as a hot war in Ukraine that we must continue to support our Ukrainian friends until they win. We need to make sure that the electorate knows that their national security will be safe with a Labour government, and that we have a policy to deal with the capability gaps and the hollowing out that we've seen under the Conservatives over the last 14 years. I mean, the army is the smallest level it's been since Napoleonic eras. We've lost 200 aircraft from the RAF, and 1 in 5 Royal Navy ships have been scrapped. That's not a record to be proud of. But importantly, it's not the record that we need to keep the UK and our allies safe in these more difficult times. And that's why Keir is in Barrow today, setting out clearly our policy of investing in the skills, the workforce in Barrow to build the new nuclear submarines that we need, and to make sure that when economic conditions allow, we're able to increase defence spending to 2.5%, making sure that we can replace those lost capabilities and have a strong armed forces set up to support the UK and support our allies abroad as well.